I got 3 admin notes for you, listener. 4 admin notes. 1, thank you for listening. This episode is brought to you by our patrons. Specifically this time, though, it's brought to us by Richard Myers. So thanks, Richard Myers. Second note. Had a couple weird audio bits in this recording. There is possibly a little bit of crackle. It's a thing with the new recording software that we're using to record over the internet. We're working on it. So apologies, I edited around it where I could, but there are a couple parts where we're awkward. It is because of editing around that. And then 3, finally, and most importantly, not most importantly, Richard is the most important thing. Thank you for sponsoring this episode. Also important, though, is that the theme song you're going to hear is actually a cover by a band called The Phone Calls. And they did this really cool cover of the theme song. And they also did an Abject Suffering one. That'll be coming. Really excited. I love it. Love it. It's flattering. It's very cool to have somebody cover the theme song, cover something I wrote. It is awesome. So check out The Phone Calls, and thank you for listening. Bye.
Last one on that, I quit.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs. It is a Games Club podcast.
And this week we are talking about Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, which is a 3D platformer developed and published by Ubisoft for the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox in 2003. Oh, and there's a PC port in there somewhere.
That I played.
Yeah.
Keyboard mouse, baby. So this episode was produced by Richard Myers. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah. And in this game, this has been on our list for a very long time.
Yes.
Of stuff. It's like, oh yeah, we should do this.
Mm-hmm. It's
really good to have an excuse.
Exactly. Yeah. It is one of the games from this era that is looked back upon the most fondly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And kind of, getting first principles out of the way, which we do now on this show. I don't think that we have played a game on the show that I have wanted more to have a remake of.
Yeah.
Than this. It's a weird thing because I don't always love remakes, and I have a contentious relationship with them. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Mm-hmm. I think that the things that this does that are good are still really, really good. The things that it does that are not as good, impaired my enjoyment and most of those issues were it was the style at the time.
Yeah.
This is a PS2 era, early 2000s 3D platformer. And does the PS2 era and the early 2000s, are any of those games have combat that stands up really well? I don't know. I feel like the answer to that might be actually no, which is kind of wild. I had some fun when we did God of War. One combat, but that wore out its welcome. Mm-hmm. By the end, it just kind of it's almost like games figured out.
Yeah.
Combat.
We
solved it.
And I'm realizing this is probably excluding the Devil May Cry series or something like that. But even that probably, has gotten better and is remembered more fondly than it actually is. And we'll get to the specifics of like specifically why this combat doesn't work. But I know what you mean by wanting like a revisit to this. Like somebody needs to go in and like save the bones of this that are good, and then cut away the other stuff so that you can really enjoy them. Yeah,
I think it would go really well.
Yeah.
With, I think it would do really well with that. And the series continued where there are like reboots and kind of updates and stuff. But I just mean this game. So these levels and basic concepts just kind of fixed and with different combat.
Yes.
I think that would be really cool. Cause that was my major bugbear, of the thing was like, and the game's very modal. Like it is very, do a thing and do another thing. We'll talk about both those things. And it was an interesting experience where one of those things I thought was really pretty joyful and fun. Pretty consistently. And the other one was pretty consistently an obnoxious slog.
Yes.
And very few points that were like, this is okay. It was a very centrifugal kind of.
Yeah. And, like the thing that was like all the reviews took away from this were like, oh yeah, the combat's no good or whatever. And I don't remember it really bothering me that much on my initial playthrough of this. But yeah, like but enjoy the platforming, kind of do the combat as fast as you can is not actually a strategy you can employ in this.
There's just more of it than
there's a lot
than is necessary. It's also going to be kind of a difficult game to talk about. I had a moment of thinking like, since this is such a, this should have been our premium episode for the month because it's such a big game. But the back half of this, like the plot's very slight to its credit.
Yeah.
And the levels are sometimes hard to describe. Like this is also, the same way that you would Zelda through a room. Like you just Prince of Persia through a room.
Yes.
Describing it in detail where it's like, you slide, you wall run, you do a swing, you jump, you bounce off onto a ladder that you then climb up to a tightrope and stuff. Like that's not what we do on the show.
No. And all of that stuff follows like pretty intuitively actually. So
that's great.
Yeah.
It's just, but it's like a series of test chambers.
Yes.
Like is what this feels like. There was like almost like a weird portal DNA to this.
The thing that I kind of came back to when I was making the notes for this, and I started being pretty granular with it. Eventually it kind of went down to, this is the Mirror's Edge episode again.
Yeah.
Where it's more like, what can we broadly say about like this section right here, while still talking about like specific pain points if one popped up, or talking about like something cool that the game does with its with its design. But like we're going to be kind of zoomed out on these individual things, and I think this episode is going to be pretty breezy as a result of that. Even though this is kind of a long game for what it is.
It's dense.
Yes.
Like it takes place over a very short amount of time narratively.
Yeah.
You spend, these test chambers are huge.
Yeah.
Like you end up in a test chamber. That's like the unit of game for Sands of Time. And sometimes they're very significant. Like it takes quite a while to get through. So we'll get into those individual parts, but it ends up being something I'm kind of conflicted on, which is good because, the worst case scenario when revisiting things from this era is always, it's just going to be horrendous. Yeah.
You just think, okay, this is not going to hold up. Like, and I've had really good memories of this. Like, this is the game that I like bought for myself on my 16th birthday. With my birthday money.
Instead of a car. You just got like $4,000 worth of Sands of Time.
I had a car. I bought a car with when I got my learner's permit. But
I buy a car with sand, Cole.
No, you can try though.
No. You can try. So I had no memories of this. Like this just came up at a time I wasn't playing games like this.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really following reviews, which would have been the thing that would have led me to this. So I was kind of like, I don't want to play a Prince of Persia game. I played those old ones; those are all right. But why do I care about that? And I kept thinking of this when it came out, like those later Pitfall games.
Oh yeah, thinking it was going to be exactly when they tried to bring Pitfall Harry back.
That's what I was thinking of this as being, and it's actually way better and more faithful and successful than that.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it.
It's a more serious product.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in this game, you play an unnamed prince with a bad facial hair. Just really the most regrettable facial hair that no one should have.
Really stenciled on.
Never have just the chin dusting. Like if you have hair on your chin, you have to have hair on your lip.
Yes.
I'm telling you this. Like if you're listening to this, like this is wisdom from the sages. You can't just do the chin.
Yeah,
You look like a Tim and Eric character.
Unless you're
it's
a bassist for the Queens of the Stone Age, stop.
Even that guy looks like shit, dude.
I know, right?
Like, do you think that's a good-looking bassist? That's a horrible-looking bassist.
He's the worst.
That's what this game looks like. You're driving a bassist through an obstacle course.
Yeah.
like, this is basically like bassist sim. Like, oh no, my bass is stuck in the palace, and I have to go get it. Like this guy looks like shit.
My bassist is stuck at the top of a very tall room. How do we safely get him to the floor so he can so
he can perform so he can come out before the opening act finishes up. But the amount of bassist energy the prince has is just fucking incredible. But that's the most important thing about him. The second most important thing about him is that he can rewind time.
Yeah.
He gets a dagger that can do that.
The fourth paragraph in his obituary after 3 railing on him for his
stupid facial hair and bad haircut.
Yeah.
Center part? Come on, man.
It was still the 90s.
He looks like shit.
But yeah, he has this dagger that lets him rewind time by pressing a little button on the hilt. And he uses this to kind of navigate this crumbling palace to undo like a disaster that he caused while being manipulated by this evil traitorous vizier kind of guy. The story setup for this is more complicated than it needs to be. A little bit. But we'll get to that. But
the actual content is like very not like the story is like I have to get to this room.
Yes, we need to.
But the bookends are a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, the sands are out. We need to get the sands back in.
Yep.
Yeah. In this game, you spend the majority of your time doing acrobatics. Like you are going to be platforming around this ruined palace and its many traps, again, trying to navigate the spaces to the floor so he can perform, or to the ceiling so he can perform. And this platforming is really good.
Yeah. It's surprising how well this works.
Yeah.
This, as far as the gameplay mode, like the Tomb Raider gameplay mode, like where the game is get from point A to point B using acrobatics. This is like pretty close to best in class.
Yeah.
At that. Like I like doing that in something like a Dishonored where like it's a little bit more free and simmy. This is very locked in. Like you have very specific kind of like, you snapped a grid.
Yeah.
A lot on this. But they're really well designed. It's really fun. It's really fast. It flows really well. It's kinesthetically like extremely satisfying.
It looks very cool.
Yeah, it's great. It looks. This is awesome. Like I would play a whole game of this. Like I think this is really, really neat. So you're doing things like wall runs. You're mantling, doing shimmies, clinging to poles, swinging on pole like trapeze kind of things. And the gameplay part is how to get from A to B.
Yes. And the game adds some different puzzle elements here. But really just kind of like figuring out what to do next. Like, okay, I can tell that I was supposed to go up to this point. How do I read the environment to figure out, knowing my jump distance, where I can get to? Or is there like a telltale shadow on that wall that says like, oh yeah, I need to wall run and then leap off from there, and there's going to be something for me to catch on to. I think this is really, really helped out by how good the camera is. In my experience, this was probably the first 3D platformer that I played where you had full control of a 3D camera. I'm sure it happened before, but this was the first one that I played. And that works incredibly well for giving you a very good sense of what is around, in addition to a first-person camera, which is seldom used but useful when it comes up, and just a button that you can press, kind of like an eco that would zoom out and show basically a diorama view of the room that you're in to like get a sense of where you're at in relation to things.
When the game had puzzles in it, when it would add puzzles to that navigation stuff, I almost uniformly found those pretty annoying.
Yeah.
Like I don't, I talked about this before, and it's just part of my gamer psychographic, but I never want to press a button, hear a ticking clock, and then have to complete a task before a door closes.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's very interesting as a gameplay thing, and the punishment for failing it is just going back and pressing the button again.
Yeah, like this would be entertaining enough, getting through those dangerous sections. That would be entertaining enough without the time pressure and the failure, right? Because like the thing that this game does, the innovation is like generally failure, you just back out of it, right?
Well, I mean, we'll talk about that at length. It is a weird. I think this game is, in terms of rethinking what failure should be in games, this is a huge like exhibit A for my stance on that.
Yeah.
Because giving, it reminds me a lot of like, when it teaches me that lives and failure states are kind of a fake idea.
Yeah.
Like by giving you this limited resource that allows you to do this. And then when you run out of the resource, you just start slightly back. And it's like, well, what if you just didn't do any of that? Like what if you just started, just did some checkpoints.
Yep.
And no limited lives or anything. Like it ends up being like kind of a clever conceit in it, but it ends up having surprisingly little impact.
Yeah, it doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, the difference between rewinding a little bit or starting at a checkpoint tends to not be very much. And it's just kind of like a quicker, more rapidly iterated version of that. And it's like, well, why not just give yourself the rewind from, SNES Classic,
right?
Or what have you, like that kind of thing. Like, I don't know. This to me gave lie to a lot of the idea of what a consequence should be for failure in a game.
Yeah.
Lots of traps.
Lots of traps. I like these traps. I always loved whenever a new one came up. Because everything is so artificial, right? Like this space it is not natural at all. It is designed around somebody with exactly the prince's moveset.
Yeah, it's designed to keep him out.
Yeah.
Like you're not rejoining Godsmack. We've got a new basis now, and because they're talking about it being like the palace's defense systems and stuff. And it's just bonkers. Like the idea that everyone is doing these wall runs and all of that stuff. Like there's zero sense of place.
Yeah. But unmoored from needing to make these be natural, like what you end up with are like traps that are designed to like affect the way that you shimmy, right? Like, okay, like, am I going to hang from this or am I going to walk along the narrow ledge? Like that actually makes a difference there. The actual just like artificial ways that they can deny surfaces to you or force you to, engage in basically stuff without a safety net at a very particular rhythm. I think that they're really ingenious with heightening that kind of throughout the entire game.
And that's why it makes me think of it as like a portal thing. Yeah. Like these are test chambers. They're tests for a very specific moveset that you have, Yeah. And that even comes down to them giving you the little preview. So you get the way that the time mechanic works in this is that you have those nodes, as we mentioned. Each node you can use to rewind back about 10 seconds. This is if you fall, you have like you take fall damage, like your kill height is pretty harsh. I noticed that as well.
Also, it's just very like the sound that it makes, just like the little like limp, wet, flat, and then it doesn't move anymore. Yeah, it's like it's very undramatic, actually.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah. And then you can. So once you have this resource, you can rewind time to fix a mistake. As long as that was 10 seconds ago. And in general, that tends to be enough time to undo a mistake. Having those, like, it almost feels like having, like, you have a set of lives and then you have micro lives within those lives almost.
Yeah.
Is what it feels like. It's weird. Like, I understand this was the back of the box thing for this game. Like, this was the gimmick, was my understanding.
Yeah.
When this came out. And it ended up being way less impressive or cool or fun to me than I thought it would. And I ended up just really liking the wall running and parkour shit a lot more than I thought I would.
Do you think that's because this is a mechanic that has been brought forward to other things?
Yeah, I mean, probably. And just kind of thinking about games differently, where I'm like, well, I have this limited resource. When I die, nothing that different happens than if I rewound. It's always like every time you die, you rewind. Yeah. That's what the consequence is for dying in games. Is a rewind. And whether you codify it into an economy or not, it's always basically the same thing. Like they do something over, you know? And it felt like a weird way of gussing up something that is just what video games are.
Right. Just, weirdly saying, check out everything new I have. And like, no, you just have that stuff laying around anyway, because that's what games are.
It's a tweak. Like you're doing it on a more granular level, which I'm not saying it makes no difference, right? Because like I can hear the straw man out there who is like, oh, like that's totally different. Like you're oversimplifying. Yeah. I'm not saying that they're not different. I'm saying that it's a little less different than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And it's not as integrated into the gameplay as much as I thought it would be. Like I was expecting to do like some time puzzles and shit.
That happens in the sequels.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I read about the sequels, but I won't touch them with the 10-foot pole because they have a Godsmack soundtrack and because they emphasize the combat. And I'm like, I don't care. Like I'm all right. I'm not invested in this character or story at all. Like I just had some fun with the platforming.
Yeah. And what we're talking about this as a way to avoid specifically dying. There are also other things that you do with the time. Other ways that you use it to fix mistakes. Either like, fuck, I'm going to rewind because I really don't feel like getting back up to the point where I botched that jump. You can, if you end up in one of those timed sequences where you're trying to get to a door, like if you mess up in a way that wastes time for you, you can go back and redo it. It is not specifically just to avoid death, but to like smooth out other kinds of failures that come along.
Yeah. But
it is, dying either through platforming or combat that you're going to end up doing this the most.
Yeah. You can also use the time thing for a couple of different moves during combat, and that is how you recharge it.
Yes.
In a general sense so the idea is that you have this platforming and it feeds into the combat. It, provides you with new enemies, and then those enemies provide you with more time dust for the platforming section. And they're supposed to kind of feed off of each other. It's not very useful or fun to use in the combat, and the combat itself I found really wanting.
Yes.
And specifically the reason, so I had just kind of played this briefly when it came to Steam. Like I didn't play it when it came out, and I was like, okay, but I didn't play it long enough to really get it. And my thinking was, they took something like old Prince of Persia and they didn't really capture the spirit of it. And I was wrong about that, because the platforming and stuff really does.
Yeah.
The issue though is they did not make an attempt to capture the combat.
Yeah.
Of Prince of Persia. And I think that would have done a lot to fix the game. Because instead of, the combat in the old Prince of Persia games is a little bit like Nidhogg.
Yeah. It's sparse, technical, and high stakes.
Yes. Like Pirates, like Sid Meier's Pirates or something.
Yeah.
Right. Now it is this kind of really primitive version of like Arkham combat.
Yeah. It's real like free flowing, and it would go on to inspire Arkham and games that Arkham inspired.
Yeah. And it's not very good at it.
Nope.
Like that combat is really good. Like I love the combat in Arkham and Spider-Man and Lord of the Rings and the like. I don't think this is a good version of it. I think that and there's a lot of like really key specific things that I can point to that are really obnoxious about it.
Very fundamental things too, like even down to the feel and the rhythm.
Yeah. It's very flashy. Like you're constantly cutting over to cutscenes to show finishing moves and the like, which is, probably pretty impressive for the time, but ends up repositioning me, into a Night at the Roxbury corner.
Yeah.
Like
you're going to get Roxbury a lot. Yeah.
You get Roxbury a lot. You get hit while you're on the ground. And the biggest thing, and I don't know if how much you share this, but the thing that fucking made me want to pull my hair out is the way that healing is done in the game and the way that they integrate that into combat arenas.
Yeah, like, hey, do you have like 30 seconds while these enemies are chasing after you to go and just
go to a drinking animation?
Yep, just go take like a nice long sip.
Like Thirsty Prince was so fucking like out of all the things in this game that feel very artificial.
Yeah.
Like, like this is their security defense system and it's mostly blades for walls. Like, how does anyone get to this guest room? This is the worst fucking guest room I've ever heard of in my life, right?
Yeah.
But that's artificial, but nothing was more artificial than me getting into a sword fight, running over to try to take a drink of water, taking 2 sips, getting hit, juking a guy around a corner so I'd have enough space where he just teleports after me, which is really fucking obnoxious.
I want to talk at length about the teleportation.
It sucks. But then running back, taking 2 more drinks, like doing this like 2 steps forward, 1 step back to try to get some hit points back. Like, why? Why do it that way? And they do all these early 2000s like checkpointing things. Like my biggest early frustration point was getting a checkpoint right before the boss where I had no health and having to spend the beginning of that boss fight trying to do this fucking water shuffle. It's so dumb. Yeah. It's so unbelievably unrelentingly dumb as a healing system.
Yeah. Your moveset is very limited. You've got just a regular slashing combo. You've got your blocks and stuff like that. You can do your some acrobatics around here. Vaulting over an enemy to get some attacks in, doing a wall, like a wall rebound, to kick back at them and things like that. However, very quickly, like, a thing about enemies is like no acrobatics around them. All you need to do is wait for an opening or dodge around them. Well, good fucking luck trying to dodge around an enemy without instigating a vault over their shoulders, where they're going to hit you, knock you down, and everybody's going to Roxbury you.
The fact that there was no real tell for when an enemy would counter the vault.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was just a thing about the enemy. Like, if it was one of those dudes who carried the like double-ended spear thing, and like the bigger sword guys, then nope, no vaulting. But
you can vault at them from certain angles, and it does work. So the communication around that, or when they're in certain animations,
I don't know. It never happened for me. It would always be like, hey, here is an accidental input that you're going to do when you're trying to do something else that will that will fuck you, and use a rewind charge to get out of this and hope that it understands what you're trying to do next time.
It's really exceedingly sloppy. It's always group combat. You're never doing a duel. Except until the end, until the boss. Like, you're always fighting a bunch of dudes. And this ends up like you're not equipped for it. In the way that you are in Arkham or Spider-Man or what have you.
Assassin's Creed.
Like, where you're jumping from enemy to enemy. I just don't feel like you're very equipped for it.
Right.
In this, there are enemies that I felt like I had to block before they would open up to attack. And then standing there waiting for them to do an attack so I can block, somebody would sidle on up behind me and get a sneaky little stab in. And then this is another, like, just fucking nail in this coffin is having to use the dagger on enemies to make them die permanently. That sucks. It's really annoying.
Because if you're doing, if you are engaging with the acrobatics, you might be pretty far away from an enemy by the time you realize, oh, they're on the ground. Now I need to try and get back to them before they get back up and they're in the fight. Like, maybe it will recognize that I'm trying to use the dagger on the downed guy, or maybe it will have me stab somebody with it to do the, freeze this enemy and kill them instantly kind of thing. Just whatever. Dealer's choice, flip a coin.
It's not very, it doesn't take, it's not very smooth.
I'm the first person to blame myself over the game or the engine, when if it were like when it is a possibility, the sloppiness is kind of built into this.
I just don't think they knew, like, I think that they did not have the lessons that we have.
Right.
For this kind of thing. So for, like, at the time I could understand just being very impressed by it. It ends up, for me, the whole feeling was so ludicrous between, like, desperately trying to drink water in the middle of the fight and then doing this, like, fun little flourishy flip to, like, put the dagger in somebody, while danger is everywhere, and then just getting knocked out of the animation because the jabroni's there. And I'm like, well, why did you take all that time to do the backflip to it? Like, stop showing off. And I understand he's telling a story. We'll get to the narrative conceit. The story, I mean, it's one of the funniest things about this game is that the story he's telling is absolutely ridiculous.
He's the worst storyteller in the world.
He's the absolute worst storyteller in the world. Like, imagine getting cornered by this bassist at a party. Like, it'd be fucking incredible. But yeah, so we'll get to that. But yeah, the combat is uniformly bad, I think. And not just like mediocre. Like, I think it's actually pretty bad.
Yeah, they add, new enemies throughout. Like, there's variety here, but none of it actually, like, breaks through. There's never a point, from the beginning all the way up to the last big combat thing that you get before you get the weapon that just one hits everybody. It is just a drag. It shows up a lot. Individual encounters are way too long. And we should talk about the teleportation. This is like this is the final nail in the coffin for me, which is
there's so many nails in this fucking coffin.
Like,
this is like a used coffin you bought from a reclaim shop. Like, it is like Kitzling fresh for grandma. Don't do this. Like,
no. Okay. So you have a bunch of enemies. They're going to try to surround you by default. And when they surround you, it gives you fewer ways to avoid their attacks, etc. You would think in that situation, given your acrobatic moveset, that you would have the ability to tactically maneuver and break those surroundings and try and lure people out to attack you one by one. No, the game does not want you to do that. The game wants you surrounded by enemies and pretty much blocking all the time. If you attempt to get around, to get some distance, to get to more favorable ground, even to engage with the systems that it gives you, like wall vaults, etc., the enemies, they will just teleport to wherever you are.
Yeah.
So there's no tactical maneuvering.
It makes the, again, like, I know I'm harping on that drinking water during fights thing, but it makes that really rough, because the way that system would work would be you would create distance and then utilize it to heal, which is a time-tested video game thing. But if enemies can instantly close distance, like, there's no reason you're not closing distance anymore.
Yeah. Why does movement matter if enemies can instantly close distance? Why am I allowed to move?
Sense as like a duel, like if this was supposed to be like Prince of Persia, the 2D ones, you know, like, and it's like, oh, it's always me versus this guy. But it's kind of this weird thing where, like, it's both.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of a God of War style, like, managing multiple enemies at once chaos thing, and this thing that is supposed to be kind of precise with blocks and counters and riposts.
Yeah.
And it doesn't agree with itself. And the teleporting ends up being really obnoxious.
Yeah.
You know, especially once there's just, like, I had the demoralizing, like, when you get done with combat, you get a little musical sting and you put away your sword. I had the demoralizing experience of thinking I was done several times, and because I wanted to be done, because all I wanted to do was play the game, or the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't put away my sword. I'd be like, where the fuck's the guy? And then he would just teleport because he had gone off to go fuck off somewhere else, you know, for a little bit. He's just idiots. Like, the AI is not good either for the enemies in this.
Yeah. Well, also it will just bring in fresh new waves of these sand monsters to come in and fight you. You know,
it's all wave based. Like, it is all like wave based combat.
Yeah.
You know, with sand idiots. And it's just like, there's not, like, they're, you know, 10, you know, Roxbury, 20 go to 10. Like, that's all they do.
Do we need to define Roxbury for people who weren't alive in the 90s?
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen that movie. I just saw that sketch a couple times. It means, so Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan.
Yeah, Chris Kattan. It was a sketch where two guys would, now in retrospect, not great, would go up to ladies on the dance floor and kind of like gang hump them.
Yeah.
Like dry dance them.
They would both try and dance on either side of somebody and then, like, knock them back and forth between them. They're like these two brothers who were, like, real, like, just like, you know, Leisure Suit Larry club guys. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a movie of this, people.
They thought this was enough to make a movie about.
There's a film.
Yeah.
About this.
Yeah. Night at the Roxbury. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about when we're saying you get Roxbury. It's just being knocked back and forth between two enemies who are attacking you and you are helpless to do anything.
Two if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. So real bummer. You can also freeze enemies with the dagger. You can freeze all the enemies.
Yeah.
And get like a little Quicksilver sequence almost, where you kill everybody in one hit. That's fun. Big resource intensive thing.
Yeah.
But this is how you're getting your additional charges. I think that there's a weird thing. I wonder if the tuning in this game, they ever added more combat to give you more sand.
Yeah.
And it may be, again, artificial constraint. Like, just give me, at the end of an encounter, fill up my fucking sand.
Yeah.
Like, don't make me earn this. This means-tested gameplay shit
Stop means-testing
does not need to happen. Yeah, it doesn't need to happen.
Yeah.
Just give me the fucking thing and let me have the fun.
Well, also, like, it doesn't need to happen because during longer platforming sections, you just have those wells of sand in the stage, you know, where they didn't put combat. It was just like, oh yeah, here's a pickup for you to, you know, to give you more charges for when you go through. There's just a lot of ways for them to avoid engaging with this very, very weak system. And, you know, if it sounds like I'm harping on it, it's because it legitimately, like, distressed me. And I'm already, you know, like, kind of running on empty as far as, like, you know, psychic reserves goes. Yeah. But, like,
and it's like 40% of the game as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot of the game. You spend more time in combat than you remember. Like, if you are listening to us and you have fond memories of Sands of Time, you probably have fond memories about the parts that are good.
Yes.
You spend more time in the combat than you remember. You know, and I'm not saying that, like, damns the game, because I came away, like, feeling a little bit warm towards this.
Yeah.
But it is just, by volume, it's not on its, you know, it's barely on its best foot.
Yeah.
It's like a 60-40 split.
Yeah. So yeah, it really does just get in the way. It gets in the way.
Yeah.
You do have an AI. You have an AI partner who is with you sometimes, kind of the secondary main character in the game, Farah, who is the princess of the kingdom that the prince steals the dagger from. And she helps out in combat by kind of providing archery support. However, if she is attacked and dies, that's a game over. And she will also help you in puzzles sometimes. Like there are puzzles where like she runs and stands on a switch in order to change the state of the world so you can do something.
Yeah. And you don't do anything with that. She just kind of does it.
Yeah.
It's not like your controller. You just say like, hey, go do this thing.
Well, sometimes she doesn't. Sometimes she's waiting for you to step on the exact square to make her run and go do a thing. Or in my case, she would just disappear. She fell through the world a lot.
Oh.
Yeah, like, hey, Farah, where'd you go?
Yeah, poor Farah.
Yeah.
She's not super great. She's all right.
Yeah.
In the story of this, she is the love interest. So this is a love story. She's the daughter of the Maharaja that the prince took the dagger from. And the prince's arc is being a chauvinist like jerk and then eventually softening up.
Yes.
And that's what we have as far as a story for the game. Like that's the body of it, other than point A, which is fucking up the sand, and point, Z, putting the sand back.
Yeah. When I was playing this, it was real, like, as far as interactions, especially when she starts like caressing you after you do a save point, it was very much like an Alex in Half-Life, like, oh, and here's your appointed girlfriend for the runtime of this game.
Government mandated, Yeah, socialized girlfriends. But yeah, it didn't feel. I don't know what she liked about him, other than he was like, guy jump good.
Yeah,
like I just and I don't know what he liked about her. Like it was just it's a weird like we're not going to become too much of a parody of ourselves to get into the gender politics of Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Just suffice it to say that if somebody wanted to, it's not great.
Yeah, so, it bears mentioning just a little bit, because this is the thing that the game was really praised for, was the interactions between the prince and Farah. Farah.
That's bonkers to me.
Yeah, just like people were saying, Farah is this really well realized female character, and their banter back and forth is really entertaining and feels real and lived in. Like that was a thing that came up in the reviews quite a bit, and played in the modern, seen through modern eyes, it doesn't bear out.
Yeah, that doesn't. It is not good, actually. Like if you think of this as like a cheesy pulp story, like an Indiana Jones, like Indiana Jones is always like shitty to his women. It kind of makes a sense in that respect, but you spend so many words on the arc of them falling in love. Like most of the prince's dialogue is him ruminating to himself on whether he should ask her out. It doesn't work very well. I don't think she's a great character in terms of a love interest or at all.
Yeah,
like
neither's the prince.
And the prince is also not a good character. Like this isn't a game for characterization.
No, this is a game for fun moving.
Yeah, it's for trapeze shit. The sound here, like I actually like the music in this game pretty well. Sometimes it's funny because everyone warned me. They're like, "Oh yeah, the warrior within or whatever turns into butt rock."
It's here.
Every once in a while, this does.
Yep.
And it's fucking hilarious.
When you go into the prison and he takes his shirt off.
The prison's amazing. Like they're just like, what is going on? But when it's not doing that, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's doing fun. Like it's using kind of a stereotypical instrument palette, but like
it's a pyramid.wave going on.
Lots of pyramid.wave.
Come with Windows 95, but
for me, so you played the PC port. I played just the original PlayStation 2 copy that I still had, laying around from when I originally got it. There's a real voice sampling quality problem, which I only mention because there's an awful lot of incidental dialogue that you just cannot hear because it's really muddy, and there are no subtitles.
Yeah, it is kind of before subtitles. Or standard, which is a bummer.
Yeah,
because I missed them as well.
Even the kind of follow up to this, The Forgotten Sands, which was released in like 2010 or something like that, no subtitles in that either. Fucking
That's a
what,
bummer.
Ubisoft?
Yeah, that's not great.
Yeah.
The other thing, real quick, I want to say about the dialogue is that the tuning on how often barks will happen while you're accomplishing a puzzle is not good. So if you like the experience of trying to do like block pushing or navigation puzzles while being constantly nagged, this game is for you.
Yeah,
Whoever the other person in the room is will never fucking shut up while you're trying to do a puzzle.
Or if you are taking notes while you are playing this game like I was, and you're pausing the game, and every 15 seconds in the menu, the prince is just saying, "Shall I go on?
Shall I go on?
Shall I go on?" As you're trying to
No.
write these notes and you're just getting angrier and angrier.
No, I'm going to go stand over here now. I don't want to be at this party to hear this story anymore. Like, would you get to the fucking punchline for the story? Like, get to the chorus, you asshole. Like, I don't know if you ever heard a guy describe a fight before, but if
I've
you've heard a guy describe a fight,
yeah.
have you heard him describe like 2,000 fights in a row? It's like the worst
So there's this
story.
guy, and he walks up behind me.
Yeah.
I turn around, I'm like, yo, what?
Yeah, I kept trying to drink water, and these guys were stopping me. I stabbed him; he didn't die.
Yeah.
Well, you mean like last time? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
It turns out I stabbed with
Yeah.
the wrong sword. I had a smaller sword. It was special. It was blue.
Yeah.
It
Well, then
ate
of
his
course I
soul.
did. Then there was another guy. Let me tell you about him. He's very similar to the first guy, actually. But let's go into it.
Yeah.
You know. Fucking A.
Jesus.
So I start here if we're interrupted. No, just tell me the end, not to trust the vizier.
Yeah.
Like we don't just start anywhere. Like, this is not a story, my friend.
Like I understand so much what they were trying to do. It's the
It's clever.
Shazera, yeah,
But
it's very
it-
clever,
yeah.
but also it doesn't add up to anything.
Yeah, it's weird. It just it breaks down under scrutiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this game was designed by Jordan Mechner, although he was not initially involved with it. He, did not want anything really to do with Prince of Persia after Prince of Persia 3D. He owned the IP, and Ubisoft bought it off of him, and he was like, "Yeah, good riddance. Go take this and run with it." And Ubisoft Montreal started developing this alongside Splinter Cell. These were both kind of concurrently put together. This one on the Jade engine, which was used for Beyond Good and Evil. Like, this was back in a time when like Ubisoft was considered to be this weird boutique darling studio when they put out this game and Beyond Good and Evil specifically within a year, and they were critically successful but commercially didn't do that great. And people are like, oh yeah, like Ubisoft is willing to take big risks compared to now, right?
Yeah, as opposed to Ubisoft now, poster child for stagnation.
Yes.
Mechner was brought in, like, so they were showing it to him, and he was very impressed with what they were doing.
Yeah.
So he joined the project as a creative consultant and eventually just took over as the designer, which is pretty impressive.
Yes.
Like, that dude's got some chops for old Prince of Persia being an old game.
Yeah.
Coming through and doing the design on this, and I don't know if this is just because I want to like that guy, but it's hard for me to think that he just. The parts of this that feel true to the old games, I would chalk up to him, and the parts that don't feel like they were not.
Yeah. The parts they do not feel like people who came up and just had recently really developed a lot of games, specifically in the late PS1 and early PS2 era.
Yeah. It's weird for me to think of Jordan Mechner all of a sudden developing this combat system.
Right.
So his original plans for the game, specifically the story, were these like really wild, bloated kind of thing with multiple characters, 9 main characters, 2 love interests, all these factions, things like that. This game actually has a lot of specific points in which it was scaled back.
Yeah.
There are little bits that you can find online of things. Like there was one of the late things was like a slave village, like a whole level that was basically done.
Yeah.
That they cut of you like liberating a slave village.
Yeah, but like what Mechter's initial plan was, to me, it sounds like, he had read all of these, he read the Arabian Nights. There's another story that's cited, but I do not have the name of it up, specifically in this milieu. And he wanted to basically make The Last Express, but an action game and in this setting is really what it sounded like.
Yep. And luckily, they scaled that way back.
Yes. Yeah. They say it went through like 150 different versions. Who knows? Yeah.
Yep.
The rewind function was not initially part of the design. It was actually suggested by a member of the team who had recently played Donald Duck Goin' Quackers and wanted the ability to rewind to undo his mistakes, like maybe playing Donald Duck Goin' Quackers. This is not the first game that had rewind. There was Blinks the Time Cat. Came out a couple years before this one.
No, and there's also always like Cat Trap, which is the one the Game Boy game I always try to point to when people talk about that stuff, which is like a proto Braid almost.
Gotcha.
But yeah, there are games with rewind that happened before. The acrobatics in this were really difficult to implement. So because they didn't do this in a smart way.
No, they didn't plan it out.
And they didn't plan it out. They'll admit this. So like every time they did a new move, they had to overhaul these other aspects of the game. This kind of played into the AI as well. So one of the things I was like reading about this, the AI was all entirely tested on placeholder flat maps. And which meant that when they tried to add them into the actual level geometry, many enemies were just cut because they couldn't do differences in elevation. Like stairs, which probably suggests part of why they teleport. Instead of walking to places. But there were like basically, imagine doing all of your enemy testing in like Final Destination, no items, and then all of a sudden introducing, another level. And they're just like, what the fuck do I do? And the AI and it wasn't just like something where it would fuck with the AI and they couldn't move. It was breaking the game left and right because enemies wouldn't see you, so they couldn't engage. And then the game would have flags where you had to defeat these enemies before you move on, but they would never come to you. Like you couldn't come to them, they wouldn't come to you, and it was fucking everything up. It was all because of like a stair step. Between them.
So this game is kind of held together with a baling wire and twine. Like just there's so many bugs were created throughout this process that eventually, they discovered, okay, we've got one really good QA tester. She's finding so many of these bugs. Let's just give them a dev kit. And then basically QA, instead of just reporting the bugs, started going in and fixing them.
You fix it.
Right. Which is, it doesn't seem like a way to win a war to me.
No, it just again, like it's kind of kludgy. Like it ended up making something that works together better than you would think. Like it's still very impressive
given the circumstances.
It's also there's probably I have not found it, but like a very if this ever got out, like a really interesting long story about all of those different compromises that are made and how it intersects with the business side of this because. The reason why they were cutting that stuff was to hit a release window. Like this game exists, like all games do, but exist very much at that junction of like ambition and business. And where one of them puts a speed governor on the other.
So I'm sure that those exist somewhere. Maybe there was a making of on the HD remake that came out for this, but I did not have that version, so I didn't see.
Yep.
So the initial sales of this game were slow. Like Beyond Good and Evil, it was just kind of considered to be this really ambitious game that didn't really find its audience, at least initially. It was received very, very well by critics and eventually picked up enough steam that they could justify doing a sequel, and then another, and then kind of continuing the franchise until they just completely stopped it.
Yep. Including several like reboots and kind of just updates.
Yes.
We mentioned that the combat system inspired other free flow systems that you probably are familiar with. So the Arkham games and the games that came after those, which we have heaped a lot of praise on.
Yes.
Having done 2 Arkhams.
This game also gave us the Assassin's Creed series. Assassin's Creed actually began as an open world Prince of Persia game. They decided to kind of morph it off into its own thing. I'm fond of at least the early ones of those, the Assassin's Creed 2, trilogy or whatever that happens there with Ezio. And that's cool. That's cool that huge important thing kind of began as a kind of a side product of this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
This as a spiritual successor or spiritual predecessor.
Yes. Also, this was the first major leading role for the voice actor Yuri Lowenthal. He voices the prince. And he's in pretty much every other game you have played. He is not quite a Nolan North, but he voiced Spider-Man in the PS4 game. He has a bunch of JRPG roles, basically anything that is the intersection of anime and video games he is in. So
yeah, he's Nolan North by Northwest, the slightly off center Nolan North. I think he has like really, really huge, like Game of Thrones extra energy to me. In this.
Yeah.
And I also was like, why is everyone British?
That's a thing.
This?
Prestige, like location and period theater like this would just cast everybody as British.
If brown, then British.
Yep.
As a thing. Like I mean, I'm not trying to get too 2020 with this, but it was just like, it's so weird that this guy is, he sounds like he's going to get wine for Cersei instead of sounding like a guy from Persia.
Yeah. It's
an accent, it exists.
It's a mid 20th century, like cinema thing.
Yeah. Or they just didn't think it would sell super well with a guy with a Persian accent.
After in 2003 in America.
Yeah, I think that's probably more likely than it being like an homage to Ishtar or whatever. So there are 2 direct sequels, The Warrior Within and The Two Thrones. I hear bad things about those. I have not played them. Mostly about the soundtrack.
Yeah, Warrior Within.
Grim metal it is.
Yeah, Warrior Within was the one that I played. Like, it's interesting because it adds a nemesis figure. So basically, over the course of messing with fate so much, the prince actually awakens this time demon who chases him around the world. And there's lots of like pursuit sections with him coming after you, which is kind of neat. And the puzzles are more, a little bit more fleshed out. It uses the time. But yeah, it does emphasize the combat a lot more, and the aesthetic overall is just pretty execrable. My understanding is The Two Thrones actually kind of takes the good stuff from Warrior Within and keeps that, but ditches the grimdark, chug-a-lug music kind of stuff. Because, the prince is less emo, et cetera, in kind of completing the trilogy, but, neither of them are considered to be as good or as, essential or important as the Sands of Time. They take what happened here and then build on it.
Yeah. As was the style at the time with sequels.
Yes. There's also like an interquel that came out. This is a really weird game that nobody talked about, but it's actually pretty good. The Forgotten Sands came out in 2010, I believe. And that takes place between this and The Warrior Within. And it's very similar to this. It's a very modest product, but I remember enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the reboot, which I had played, or the 2008 Prince of Persia, which is not a reboot, but it's just an untitled cel-shaded game.
Yeah.
I had played that one, actually, a little bit. It's not in the continuity, has big gameplay differences, and my memory of it was that it would try to emphasize Farah more in terms of gameplay, but I don't remember very much of it, and I never finished it because it's not really my steez.
It's a little bit more what we're asking for with this. Like, it gets rid of the rewind feature, and your companion, who is, I forget what her name is, she's like a magic user. She will like rescue you if you fall. Like, she's pretty much with you the entire time and like compliments you in battle. Not like Farah compliments you, but like compliment with an E.
More so.
Contributes in battle and kind of rescues you. I remember playing a little bit of that and thinking, hey, yeah, this is cool, but it wasn't necessarily a thing that I was going to pursue.
Yeah. In general, I am happy leaving this behind.
Yeah.
Like, this is not that interesting to me as an aesthetic or a gameplay mode. So when I was reading about the sequels and stuff, like, this is not something like Luigi's Mansion where like I'm ending it thirsty for more.
Yeah.
Like, happy I played this important game in game history, but it sounds like I was just skipping over the entire body of the episode there to get to the ending. And I swear I'm not, but it's just kind of like just trying to search my memory for specific test chambers and what I think of them. And it's difficult, but we'll get into it here.
Yeah.
So there's a prologue. Time is not a river; it's an ocean in a storm.
Yeah, we got our narration here, starting with a line that'll come back later. You know, just kind of a broad statement about what we're going to be playing with. As we start out with a pretty long opening cinematic, you know, talking about, you know, our main character, he's got this father, he's this Persian king, and they were on a trip to visit their buddy, the Sultan of Azad, when this vizier who worked for a local Maharaja they were passing by said, hey, come over here, get this cool sand, and I can give you eternal life. So they waged war on this, palace.
Well, he initially said, hey, I'm going to open up the gates for you if I can have one thing from the treasure room.
Yes. Yeah.
Like he wants the eternal life. He wants the dagger.
Yeah.
He was not offering it, but he's so slimy. Like, give me a non-slimy vizier,
please.
You know, just for once.
Yes. Less obviously villainous.
M for NSV. But yeah, so he's super obviously evil. And the prince wants to prove himself. There's this, like, you know, TV trope style arc words of like honor and glory. Like, he keeps trying to get honor and glory. He wants to prove himself to his father. So he went ahead of the attacking party to get into the city.
Yeah. Because he knows he's not
tutorial.
much of a fighter. He's like a thief kind of guy. Like,
yeah. It doesn't stop him.
You're right.
From just constantly fighting. But he's not much of a fighter. It's true.
Yes. Yeah. But this gets us our tutorial. You know, we go through and do a bunch of our stunts. You know, it gives us a little prompt when we go about things. It's really ham-handed. Like the first time you do any of your stunts, the game slows down to show it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty impressed by itself, somewhat justifiably, but then also, like, you know, graphics and presentation.
Yes.
Always going to look silly in retrospect. Like in 30 years, the stuff that we're super psyched about how good it looks now, we will feel silly about.
Yes.
You eventually get into this treasure vault, and this is through fighting. Again, we talked about all that stuff in generalities, and you just Prince of Persia your way there, right? To get up to the Dagger of Time.
Right.
And as you do so, you grab it, the ceiling collapses, and time slows so you can get out of the way.
Right. This is how the prince discovers, you know, the innate abilities of the dagger.
Yeah. I thought it would just be the dagger of slashing. I thought the time was just the name.
Yeah.
You know?
It's actually a peninsula.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, that is only one small thing that it does. You know, the reason that the vizier wanted the dagger was to actually use as a key for this gigantic hourglass that holds the sands of time. You know, so the prince, you know, you Prince of Persia, you're way back, and, you know, you found the dagger. The vizier can't use the hourglass without it. The king does not, you know, it refuses the request. The vizier wants the dagger. King refuses, saying, hey, it's my son's. He found it, finders keepers. So we're going to continue.
Yep. So the party continues. Like the vizier's like, well, and then just continues to go with you. And I'm like, why are you still here? But they go to Azar with captives, like people they have taken from this palace, including Farah.
They've killed the Maharaja, and Farah is kind of in among the slaves that they have taken.
Yeah. And she recovers from it well.
Yeah.
Like she basically forgives all of this pretty quick.
Yep.
So they get up there, they show Azar the sands of time here, and the vizier explains, like, oh, the prince has this dagger that allows us to use the sands. And the prince is like, all right, dagger, me. Walks forward, puts the dagger into the hourglass. Farah tries to yell and stop him. They brought all the slaves into this room for a reason. And cannot. The sand explodes and turns everybody into sand monsters.
Yes. The only unaffected people, you know, here, just pretty much mostly the only unaffected people are the prince, the vizier, and Farah. You know, even, you know, Azar and even the prince's father are all taken over.
Yes.
The vizier demands the dagger, saying, hey, I can undo that mistake that I made you make by telling you to do that, you know, to bring your father back. But the prince, you know, dashes out.
Yeah. And the prince seems like he could take it back as well.
Yeah.
I don't think you noticed yet exactly how to use the button. You know, but there's one button on the dagger.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, maybe it does different things when you hold it versus when you press it. I've got no idea.
There's a couple times in this, I didn't really make note of them. A couple times though, where like, you're like, oh, I can't take that back. And I'm like, that's all you can do, man. Like that's your whole thing.
There's one notable scene where like he's running along a bridge and then he falls like down, several stories, and he's like, "Damn it, I'm stuck." I'm like,
and no, you're not. You'll never be stuck again.
Yeah.
Like it's the whole point.
Yeah.
It's like how in the Sonic movie, how he kept forgetting he was the most powerful being in the universe.
Yeah.
Like time shit is the most powerful superhero power you can have.
Yeah, you're an Omega level mutant, dog.
Yeah, you're omniscient.
Yeah,
Prince. Act like it.
Yeah. So this gives us our initial battle with our sand monsters and kind of starts the actual gameplay section of the game. It's real basic here. You're fighting dudes with swords. We're going to talk about when they add in the other different kinds of enemies. But, these guys, you can vault over them. You basically can use every move that you're able to.
Yeah. And the vault is the key.
Yes.
Like it's, similar to like, that's how I play Batman too. Whatever. Just lots of vaults.
Yes.
So as you're the prince, you see Farrah running away, you see this fountain of sand and you step into it, and these are your save spots.
Yeah.
And these are really weird. They show you a super dramatic vision of the future of how to solve the upcoming puzzles.
Yeah.
I don't know what the game adds by doing that in advance.
I don't know. I don't think it takes away. And in fact, like there would sometimes be things that I would, recognize, but like shown out of their context, it's actually hard to treat this as actual clues for what's going to happen.
Yeah. I just ended up finding the kind of repetition of it a little bit annoying.
Yeah.
Like the super dramatic, musical sting, here's a bunch of platforms, I don't know what they are, as opposed to having like something actually in the, because the idea is it's a hint system, and it spoke to that thing about like, got to punish you a little bit.
Yeah.
So if I got to a point where I was stuck in a puzzle, I could backtrack to the save spot and watch the movie again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what did that take from me? Like what, what did that add to the experience of making me backtrack?
Yeah.
Like I think ideally the idea would be you remember it, like you see it and you keep in mind, okay, I'm going to do this. But they're so abstract and like cut so quickly.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that without knowing exactly what it's referencing.
Yes.
So as a hint system, I don't think it's very good.
Yeah. It also throws in narrative misdirections, like the visions that this shows you. It is really setting up Farrah as somebody who's going to betray you.
Yeah. Yeah. Which doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Farrah is naive. Is her worst crime.
Yes.
She's not evil.
Yeah. So shortly after this, we are still continuing to chase after Farrah. This introduces the kind of trapeze section where you're swinging along these bars. I really like this. This feels like locked into a grid like Tomb Raider does a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, understanding when you need to go for the one that's in front of you, or like when it will be best to, swing into a wall and vault off of that to get even higher. Like, this is always fun, especially when you can do a long run of them without breaking rhythm.
Well, and they do a really genius thing here. As opposed to making it physics-based, there's just a button to make you swing.
Yes.
And you have two states. So, like, the problem with these things in normal video games is that it's granular. You have, like, it's analog, rather. So, like, you are swinging just a little bit, or swinging a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, or maximum swinging.
Yeah.
Here, you're either basically, you just started, or you're swinging at full speed. It's just binary. So if you're swinging at full speed, you're always able to get the jump.
Yeah.
Whereas other situations like this in video games, a lot of times it's a judgment call whether I'm getting enough momentum to make the jump. And taking that away is actually, like, I think really clever and good.
Yes.
Like, it makes us feel like, better. It takes something and turns it into a navigation, like, environmental puzzle, as opposed to kind of a guess based on you making suppositions about the physics of the world.
Yeah.
That eventually you'll get, but internalize, but it takes away that step.
Yeah.
You never have to like internalize the physics because everything's on a grid. There isn't, there are physics, but they're not, they don't behave simulation-y at all.
Yes. No, if it was the case where it was analog and like there was just a speed that you had to get up to get to reach your maximum jump, all that would lead to is just me swinging for 4 times longer than I needed to make sure I had a whole
several deaths when you didn't have the, or several rewinds when you didn't know.
Yeah.
Rewinds, you start with 3 of these, like they're very limited.
Yeah. They expand as you kill enemies, which is nice, I suppose.
They expand. I thought they expanded as you picked up those little sand piles, those like heart containers. Like
one of
those.
One of them expanded. So you got like kind of the 2 meters. There's like there's the actual like rewind charges, and then there's the complementary charges that control your combat abilities that grow alongside it.
Yeah.
One of them grows with one, and the other grows with the other.
I think that the heart containers ones, the piles of sand, give you additional nodes.
Yeah,
and then every 16 enemies, you get the combat ability.
Yeah,
secondary node.
I will believe you. But yeah, it grows over time, and that is good. It feels like it grows, well enough with the complexity of the puzzles, so you always have like just enough. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, the swinging here is good. Other forms of swinging you do later on, also good. This is where you get the ability to stop time for enemies. You can do the stab, you can do the slow-mo. I never got a lot of use out of the slow-mo because you slowed down a lot as well.
Yeah, it's not relative slow-mo.
It's not max pain.
It's real weird. I thought it would be the key to doing the like press a button and start a timer puzzles. But it's really not.
No.
So yeah, I didn't get a lot of use out of that either. I did stop freeze enemies a lot.
Yeah. So. Especially if I wanted combat to end very quickly.
Which I did.
Yeah.
10 times out of 10. So,
yeah. This section also introduces your health up kind of thing. I think this is really cool. Just you'll go to an out of the way area of a test chamber, or oftentimes these are kind of in the space in between different levels, where there's just a hallway that ends up twisting in an impossible way, and you start noticing there are veils hanging. And as you go into the darkness, you come out into this impossible fountain space where you go in, drink from the fountain in the middle, wake up back in the real world outside of where that hallway was, and now there's no hallway, there's a wall.
Yeah. Yep. It's a little magical realism there.
Love it.
Going on. Yeah. And you end up with a really large health bar by the end of this.
Yes.
Like it's semi-generous.
And it doesn't matter because in combat, you'll be rewinding the same one hit worth of health countless times. Yep.
Yeah. So eventually you catch up with Farah. And she says, give me back the dagger. And the prince, gets in this, like, why should I trust you? Stuff. And I'm like, dog, you just came and killed her father and saved her.
Yeah.
Like, come on, my friend.
Everything she loved is gone. So
yeah, you did this. Like you're responsible for this.
Yeah.
So you kind of become a sulky baby, and then I want actually we didn't talk about this in generalities, but I want to kind of chat about it here. Every non-humanoid enemy in this somehow sucks worse than humanoid enemies do.
It's really bad, and these
the
beetles,
birds.
the fucking birds,
dude,
the birds,
like.
No, I was going to talk about the birds when we got there. We got the Beatles. The Beatles are not necessarily
the
as
Beatles.
bad.
The 60s sucked. Like a terrible decade for music with the birds and the Beatles.
But don't forget the bats.
The greatest decade for music.
Yeah.
Oh, the bats are great though. Actually,
what?
There's a flying nun. Flying nun. The bats.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I didn't know. There was a band called the Bats. No, I was more talking about the bats that you fight in this game.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. No. So somebody needs to spend some time on their Flying Nun Records.
Yeah, I suppose.
Collection. They're good.
Okay. No,
it's all good. And, New Zealand best.
I'll believe you. Like, okay. Cool. Yeah. All right. They're high fidelity.
Rock.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
But the bats in the game are not good.
No. They're bad. The Beatles are the least worst of them. They're just numerous, and they only take like one hit to take out. I have no idea why they're here.
Really mindless.
Yeah.
One of the cut enemies was going to be a tiger, which like might have been
topical.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's true. I didn't think about that. It might have been tougher, like a tough enemy, because the thing that the animals have in common is they all die very quickly, but they all come up at annoying fucking times.
Yeah, they all ruin the platforming.
Yeah. Yep. So Beatles, you step out on this balcony after this, and we see some winged creatures flying the hourglass away from the palace. And the prince believes that the vizier is their master.
Yes.
So, okay, he's got winged creatures now. We get to the bottom of this guest room, this like bed chamber. And where they're introduced to time slowing puzzles here.
Yeah, we're introduced to pushing and dragging things. Like we got to find a hidden passageway by moving one of the dressers, and then we've got to get through a door that closes. when you step off of a switch, you freeze time, you step on the switch, and then get through the door before the time freeze ends.
Mm-hmm. I think that one of the things this game does that's pretty good is that pushing and pulling things is really fast.
Yes.
You don't do the struggle thing. Like, it's like, no, I can actually move things pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice.
It's also really apparent where stuff needs to go to.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
So we get through this, and we get past a collapsing bridge, and we get to the core of the palace's defense system. There's a very loud guard. Like, his performance is the most over the top thing in the game. Kind of yelling at you from the top of the cylindrical chamber, like, we need to restart it. Then it'll kill the monsters.
I hate this guy so much. If he had been the M boss, I would have like raised this a letter grade in my head. Like, just, oi, pull the lever. Like, he's very
Picked
cockney.
him up in the right order.
Picked him up in the right. That's good. Pick him up in the right order. And
We
at
got
the end of it,
there's some sad monsters in it.
it's Gov at the end, and this gets past the puzzle, but there's not a lot to the puzzle. It's fine.
I like it. It's a little awkward, but I was happy to like plan it out.
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, I don't know. I was like, okay, I get what I need to do. Now I just have to press the right buttons to do it. But at the end of it, he goes like, pull the lever. And this game does not know what a lever is.
Mm-hmm.
They always refer to these like a hanging pull-up bar as a lever.
Uh-huh.
And I was like looking for the lever, and I couldn't find the lever because I was looking for a video game style lever.
Yeah.
And he's just yelling at me constantly, like, pull the lever. And I'm like, I will fucking end you. Like, if I ever see you in an alley, or the voice actor in an alley or at a convention,
uh-huh,
I'm gonna punch you in the fucking throat. Like, leave me alone. I was so goddamn annoyed at this. Like,
yeah,
because there's no lever, and it's like it's a pulley.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a pull chain. It's not a lever.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, he is constantly, shouting these barks and giving you these kind of oblique hints as you are trying to, during the process of solving this puzzle. Like, he's just reminding you what the different, like, spinners do. Because, you've got to rotate and raise this kind of central platform to pick up these different axles that are coated by, like, different phases of the moon. And like you're going around, and just there's a lot of movement involved with getting this thing up. And he is just constantly interrupting your train of thought by shouting useless repeated information.
Yeah. It's really obnoxious.
Yeah.
So doing a puzzle while being yelled at is part of the experience of this game for sure.
Yes. Yeah. But at the very least, he gets his just desserts. He deserved to die for annoying me, Gary.
I think so too.
Yeah. This activates the palace's prince-specific traps, and instead of killing the sand monsters, like this guard thought would happen, no, it just kills the guard.
Yeah. And now there are traps everywhere, and you very rarely see these. Like, I was hoping that I'd be able to use the defenses to like make combat easier or something.
That would require combat to happen when you. That would require this game to be less modal than it is.
Yeah. You just create a bunch of obstacle courses for yourself.
Yeah.
Basically. Which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
So we're introduced to a new trap, these spike traps on the floor where you have to walk very slowly, and these buzz saws that run along the side of the walls. Yes. So we're near wall running. Again, that's the basic way that people got around this very fun palace.
Nobody used floors. That is so 12th century.
The floor is always lava. Yeah.
I like the floor spikes quite a bit. I think that's a really clever way to do those, to where you have to do a tiptoe over them. That's worked into the time sections really well.
It's also interesting where sometimes you'll have to land on them, or avoid landing on them rather, because landing on them also sets them off.
Yeah.
So you head out to this courtyard. We have the fat enemies that will prevent you from jumping over them.
No, you can jump over these ones.
Oh, gotcha. It's not that's the later fat enemies.
Yeah. We get the spear guys, and then around this point, the ones that you cannot jump over, at least throughout most of the game, are the ones that have the double-sided spears.
Yeah. The bakla. We're also introduced to the rebound attacks where you kind of do like Chun-Li and jump off the wall and attack a guy.
Yeah.
From here.
So on our way up, again, we are just going to continuing trying to get to the outside. We get the spinning scimitar blades that pop out. These are kind of cool because they either go like in 180-degree kind of increments or 90-degree increments, and they all move on kind of a locked-in rhythm. So you can really plan out your progression through them.
Yeah, and we didn't really talk about it, but you don't have a traditional jump in this. You have a contextual jump. When you get to the end of something, if you press what would traditionally be the jump button, you do a dodge roll.
Yeah.
And your dodge roll has iframes.
Yeah.
Which is a very early example of that. Like you can dodge through these, which is really cool.
Yeah. Which, I don't know, like that's not something that I knew could happen when I first played this. But knowing dodge rolls, man, really lightened my load on these.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we get a cool one here. We get a good one, to me, a good one of these long-timed hallway sections where it's pretty, normal until the end. The door is slowly closing. At the end, you have two options, basically either side of the wall over these instant death spike traps. One is fast and dangerous, like you have to run through just a very narrowly timed set of buzzsaws. The other one, it's slower and a little bit more safe. It involves kind of tiptoeing past the spikes, and like which one you take is going to be determined by how much time you have left before the door closes entirely.
Yeah. Neat idea. I like the idea of these things where there are two different paths.
Yeah. Just because for as fun as the platforming and stuff is in this, it is often very prescriptive. There's one way to get through it.
Yeah. Agreed. So this is the area where I was low on health because of traps, and then ended up in this boss fight. One of very few boss fights in the game. Yeah. And I had, a sliver of health. And then had to go in and, so your prince's dad is here now. He's a demon. It's him and his army that you're fighting. This is me running down to the end of the hallway with teleporting idiots after me, trying to get to the fountain to get a couple quick drinks in before having to actually do the fight. And this was beyond fucking obnoxious.
Yes.
Hated this.
If I die in a boss fight, respawn me with, I don't know.
With health.
Yeah. Maybe not full health if you don't feel like being generous. I would argue it doesn't hurt you to be generous. Maybe half health, don't respawn me with one hit worth of health. You can check this, Yeah.
And full health really would have been the correct move, I think, here.
Yeah.
I was really annoyed by this fucking long, tedious fight. This is where I fell out of love with the combat.
Yeah.
I was never in love with it, but this is where I was like, oh, that's going to be a problem in this game.
Yeah. If the double spear guys that you couldn't vault over were not introduced before this, they are out in force here. So it takes away a major move that you have for, getting out of these, you are surrounded scenarios.
Yeah.
The king himself is a very tough enemy. He's bigger than all the rest. He's got a big old falchion or whatever. You can't vault over him, and he comes after you and attacks you. He knocks you down pretty much immediately. You can't really get at him because you have to do like dodge rolls around him. But to do that, you need to take out all the other enemies. The other enemies, they seem unlimited just because there are so many of them. They come wave after wave, but it's a game of avoiding the king while taking out his stooges so you can get him alone and deal with him at all reasonably. Yeah.
Yep. Really obnoxious.
Yes.
Really tedious. Afterwards, you're super mad. The Pharaoh tries to comfort you, for your father's death. You're like, that was not my father. It was quick. And you're at the save point. You wake up from this vision. You see Pharaoh trying to take the dagger.
Right.
She wants to undo the disaster, because the sands are going to continue to spread. And now you're basically on Pharaoh's side, even though you're still kind of playfully jousting.
Yeah. So this begins it, at least, they're on equal terms, kind of. But yeah. We need to proceed together. We need to team up. And here she is with you, not making that much of a difference. She does help in the combat. When she shoots somebody with an arrow, they will kind of like double over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. it kind of helps.
Yeah. Also, she will shoot you in combat.
I never got shot.
Yeah, happened to me a lot.
You shouldn't have mouthed off, Cole.
Talk shit, get shot.
Yeah, exactly. Talk shit, get hit, Cole.
Yeah.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, man.
Yeah. But yeah, if you are standing next to an enemy that she is trying to shoot, you will get hit and she will apologize to you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But yeah, it's fine. They're new enemy here. These female warriors who dual wield. These, I think the gimmick to them was you have to block them and then they open up.
Yeah.
So that's how I took care of them. Again, like you're never, it's really kind of amazing how poorly the combat is like handled in this, because it feels like a very video game design 101 kind of thing to, when you introduce a new enemy, you introduce them by themselves and then start doing mix-ups.
Yeah.
These are immediately throwing you in groups. Mm-hmm. So like my unclarity on which enemies would stop you from jumping over them is partly my fault because it's, me not being observational, but partly because this game never does the very like Mario Brothers 1.
Yeah.
Here's an enemy by itself. Learn how to use them. Now there's two of them. Now they're in mix-ups. Like it's always just, what if you fought a bunch of dudes?
What if
every
you were
single
surrounded?
fucking time. What if you were surrounded? Like every single time.
I just picture Jordan Mechner walking around, looking at a design on a whiteboard. What if he was surrounded?
And like it's brilliant, and he's just drawing in a bunch of little stick figures around him. Like and so that's the thing that's frustrating about these enemies, because I played the whole game and I'm like, yeah, like I really want to understand these enemies, because they take early game enemies and you're constantly running into them. Like these ladies will be part of the mix-ups for the whole game. Mm-hmm. Why am I ending the game not being totally sure what their gimmick is?
Yeah.
And it's because combat is this chaotic, hard to follow mess that is kind of just thrown at me in big bursts.
Yeah. Additionally, like the, throwing a new enemy into the mix should be something to be celebrated in terms of gameplay, like, shit, like more possibilities here. Like maybe they will interact with my abilities in a different way. Turns out not really. And when they do, it is just a way to deny you your own moves and attacks and stuff. It doesn't articulate, like it just there's no like systemic integration here, like even like between enemy, they do not fight differently together, again just as a result of the fact that there really is no AI going on here. Bummer.
So you get all your power tanks at this point to get your mega freeze now, which is basically a smart bomb.
Yes.
So it freezes everyone and they'll die in one hit. And we climb up this tower, lots of these like kind of parallel bars, doing wall jumps, rebounding off of them to reach higher levels of parallel bars to reunite with Farah.
Yes. You get there and you discover her ability, which is to squeeze through cracks. It hits switches to open doors for you. It's a very video game. Sometimes she just doesn't see the cracks and doesn't go through.
Yeah, you have to kind of stand by them until she figures it out.
Right. Get the hint.
If you can.
Yeah. There's no prompt when you're next to it to inspect it and say, hey, come over here. It's just whatever she decides to do.
Yep.
So we get down this other chamber by taking turns pulling these levers to rotate stairways. And this introduces the scissor blade traps, which basically make the floor on particular platforms lava rhythmically. They will, just they don't react to you standing on it, but they will snip at certain intervals, and you have to time standing on them, standing on the platforms around their snips.
Yep. At the bottom, you get to this area. I didn't really read this as this, and it's maybe I just fucked it up too soon. Or you move boxes over switches, and enemies are not immediately aggressive.
Yeah, like the enemies are on a patrol. This is the only time where you really have the ability to determine when you aggro and who you aggro.
Yeah. It's weird.
But yeah, I don't think there's a way to get through this without combat, but yeah. You are trying to move these boxes over switches. This introduces the boxes. Again, like we said, this is not that huge of a problem. In terms of moving them around, it's very quick. And this takes us through outside and into the King's Menagerie. We have to climb up his huge cage tower. I imagine this might have been where the tigers were introduced.
Oh, probably.
Probably. Instead, we get the birds, Gary.
The birds.
I think the birds look cool. I always like a bird with that big old curved, thin beak, like an ibis or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, again, in me trying to figure out what the gimmicks are to enemies in this is that like the birds, you also counterattack, like you block and then counterattack.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work when there are a billion of them and they do it while you're fucking platforming.
Yep. Or when you're, walking on a balance beam. Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of balance beam birds, man.
Mm-hmm. BBBs.
Really obnoxious. Yeah. BBBs.
Yeah. The birds are not good. You have to wait for them to attack you. You have to counterattack it. The game does have like a parry and riposte system. In the 20 years that I've been playing this game, or the 20 years that I've been aware of it, 17, I suppose. I've not been able to get it to trigger once.
Yeah.
It's
not very strong.
It just says attack while you're blocking, and you will return the attack. No, it's not. No, not going to happen. Doesn't happen here. You just have to either block or take the attack, and then wait a second, and then hope that the enemy is still near you. Hope that the bird is still close enough for you to hit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get to the top of this cage tower, and the save spot here gives you the first vision of Farah betraying you. This is where it shows her letting you fall off of a bridge.
Yeah. But she's a bro. She's not going to actually do that.
Right.
We're introduced to this hallway where there's these kind of time challenge with those spinning scimitar blades that pop up. And they spin in this way where like the easy way around has spikes, which you can't run over. So you have to time your rolls very carefully. This is tricky.
Yeah. Tricky and good. This is where I was like, oh yeah, I have iframes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You get outside and the birds really come home to roost on your head while you're standing on a ledge, kind of in this cliffside and waterfall section. That also like this part involved like a non-trivial amount of backtracking, and
it's weird.
Yeah. In a game that so often it is clear which way is forward and which way is back, just like hitting a wall and having it be like, oh yeah, go back to a couple platforms before and then do this wall run that you have opened up. It's just not something that it did. And I found myself stuck here trying to find a way forward where there was none.
Yeah. It's not great. And when you're fighting the birds on ledges, basically all I would do is flail wildly.
Yes.
Like that's all I could really do and just kind of hope and take some damage.
If they hit you while you're standing, you're going to fall and grab. If they hit you while you're grabbing, you will fall off.
Yeah. Obnoxious.
Yes.
Break through though into the baths, where there are these dudes with chain weapons that pop up. Here, this new enemy.
I don't know how they're different, Gary.
I don't know how they're different either. I didn't really there's a weird, there's also, I know we're harping on the combat a lot and it's so weird because the parts of this that are good, like I'm trying to underline, we're going to end up skipping over a lot of just like, where it's like, yeah, you Prince of Persia over here. But
yeah. It consistently
feels fun and good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is joyous and good. It's just hard to describe. Like the friction points obviously stand out, right? Because they're friction points. Part of the thing is that enemies also kind of bled together because of their visual.
Yeah.
Thing like they'll have basically the same color scheme.
Yeah, just gray skin and like red or maybe like a little bit of blue or yellow in their clothing.
Yeah. It just I want them to look different, more different than they do now. But yeah, these guys pop up and they're fine.
Yeah.
We get a sword. Now.
Oh yeah, this is where we get our upgrade here. It does a little bit more damage. Enemies will go down in some more attacks. Don't worry, they will immediately introduce tougher enemies where you are back to square zero.
Yeah, keeping you at the curve. The big Metroidvania thing is you can now break walls with this sword, and one of them will unlock the original Prince of Persia. I love it when games do this.
Yep.
I wasn't down to just play Prince of Persia right now, but I like Prince of Persia. In general,
I fired it up. I did a couple of levels just because I was at this point I was frustrated with Sands of Time. I have so many good memories of playing Prince of Persia I never had a home copy, but when we went to the library, this was the game that I would always sit down to play before all the mechs had mist on them.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a proto Another World or Abe's Odyssey or whatever.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So there's a big battle in the soldiers' mess hall. It is otherwise unremarkable, except this is the first time where I lost Farah in combat. And this ended up being a bigger problem later for an encounter that is just the fucking pits. But here is where I realized, oh yeah, this kind of is an escort mission. Like, she has a health bar. When she yells for help, she might need the help.
She actually needs help.
Yeah. Wait. Yeah. So that is a frustration.
Yeah. Yep. There's a drawbridge here that we cross here, and we move outside. The prince rips his sleeves off
For no reason.
at this point. Well, I mean, like, the bassist has to draw attention to himself somehow. Like, otherwise you're not going to get the girl.
Yeah.
The guitarist and the singer, real obvious appeal. The drummer has stamina. Like, the bassist needs something to peacock. Like,
I was at a family function. I'm not going to be specific about this. And a family member, like, we were eating dinner. Family member got up and left, went to another room and came back out, in like a tank top or a sleeveless shirt. And he sat down and continued eating. You're like, hey, what was going on? Like, oh, I had to free up my arms. The prince had to free up his... Do you corn on the cob? I don't know. Yeah. I had to free up my arms.
When I was like in 8th grade,
okay,
my favorite T-shirt was a Beavis and Butthead T-shirt.
Okay,
I loved Beavis and Butthead, and I ended up making that a sleeveless shirt because I was in 8th grade, a little idiot, and I wore it all the time. So I just want everyone to imagine how cool I was. My hair was like super brown, semi mullet, and big chubby teen arms, with a homemade sleeveless, like just ripped off sleeves.
That is so great.
Very cool look.
Yeah,
just me reading the Dungeon Master's Guide in study hall with that look.
Yeah.
So in case you thought I was cool in 8th grade, that's what I was like in 8th grade.
You're always talking about how, like, oh, I didn't play that game or I didn't watch that show as a teenager doing kickflips and getting pussy.
Well, that was in 9th grade.
Okay.
Like, I ditched that shirt and then it was all pussy forever.
Yeah.
So that's. I had to get rid of the shirt first, though. The shirt was really keeping them away. So.
Oh, jeez.
But I lost my virginity at 16. It wasn't great.
Didn't need to know that, but okay.
Anyway, you go to we get separated from Farah here.
Okay.
She gets stuck in this tower. She can't get out, and she's like, "Hey, meet me back at the baths." And
this is
the prince thinks it's very funny that he does it, that he's being asked to go to the baths.
Yeah.
Like, what is happening with the humor of this section?
So I took it that he was just incensed that she thought that she could order him around. Like, the entire next 2 sections have the prince talking to himself. Go to the bath, she says. Oh yes, I'll be there right away, your highness. Ooh, I'm just a prince. Oh no, don't worry. I'll meet you there. Like, he's just going on this, for nobody, just talking to himself. And as he's saying, okay, is this part of the story that he's telling to Farah at the end of this?
That's what I was thinking about, how funny that is. Whereas, remember when you did that really horrible thing? Yeah. I really hated it.
Yeah.
Now I want to get married, but before, yeah. I thought I was taking it as both how would she deign to order me? Also, why would I know where the baths are?
Well, we just came through them. The baths were...
Or how to get to the baths.
Yeah.
Because he has to go, this is a really sloggy, you have to go through the caves to get to the bath because nothing is designed
right
in this game. But yeah, he's just constantly doing it. It's very obnoxious. And it is a long section.
Yeah.
It also introduces balance beams, which I think, as far as the traversal stuff in this game, is its one misstep.
Yeah.
Because I just never think this is that fun. This is a video game thing, but
yeah,
I love it.
It slows you down. There's never really any danger there, and the presence of balance beams and just the animation of is to add suspense. There's not really any suspense when you can undo them, any mistakes that you make.
Well, and the fact that you can just, it's not even, you don't just do it through the time thing. It's just when you fall, you grab onto the ledge and you just get back up.
Right.
And this is not, Sands of Time is not unique in this. Mm-hmm. This is just kind of balance beams in video games.
Yeah, the balance beams in God of War are fucking atrocious. Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. And it's a bummer. Like, I just don't think it adds very much. Especially since this game is about freedom of movement at its best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it is at its best. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next we get to this gatehouse section.
Yeah. And you get to the ground and raise up this gate. This is the section where you're fighting the most animals. Because like the ground is this kind of collection of ruins or whatever. It's covered in beetles. So you raise the gate in order to create the surface to wall run across. And to get back up there, you have to backtrack over all of these balance beams that helped you get down while you are being harried by birds who kind of seem to respawn in waves. So eventually it was just like, all right, well, I'm going to fight all the birds until they're not here anymore because they are complicating and making the backtracking I need to do impossible.
Yeah. It's annoying. Mm-hmm. It's weird though, because I imagine I always think of the straw man who's going to like slam us for inconsistencies. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we like is when things are integrated.
Yes.
Like generally, but this just isn't the way to do it.
No.
We never like when things are just annoying. Mm-hmm. Nobody likes being nagged, like nobody likes being needled while you're trying to do something.
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as integration.
Mm-hmm. And the
integration for this would be like you do a puzzle, like the birds are coming to annoy you for this, and then you do a puzzle thing to like close off the source of the birds.
Yeah. Or the birds are susceptible to some kind of trap in there as well that you can use your acrobatics to get them into.
Yes.
It's still like really modal. Like when you're just on a balance beam, the birds come up to you and you have to press the button. You can't move when your sword's out. You just kind of have to swipe at them until you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Oh boy. Yeah. So we get to this these waterfall caves here. You're still kind of going on about this bit about women or near around and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, Prince Alan. And this is where they introduce bats that swarm you while you're on the ledges, as opposed to just birds that swarm you on balance beams.
So like a swarm of bats is basically identical to a bird. Because if they get at you, they'll knock you down while you're doing stuff. They'll interrupt your jumps and things like that. However, it's like a bird with multiple hit points. So like it will fly at you and then you do your attack. That takes out some of the bats. Then they fly away slightly. They still seem close enough to come up and do damage to you. And you cannot attack them until they coalesce again.
Yeah. So this, you end up jumping from stalactite to stalactite here. Which they do a little clever thing where they fall, but they fall after you jump from them.
Yes.
I never ran out of time on one, but it always felt like I was going to.
It was a one-use pillar. I like that quite a bit. It makes it feel more dangerous than it actually is, but you're not reusing. There's never a time where you need to like conserve them.
Yeah. Yep.
So this gets you to an underground reservoir. Like we're back into the constructed environment here beneath the palace, beneath the bathhouse and stuff like that. And this is where they introduce rope swinging. This is really late in the game for them to introduce that. This is cool. So it is like swinging from the trapeze, where you're doing the spin swing. Here you're either swinging or you're not. The thing you have the ability to change is your height on the rope from which you swing. And that changes like how far you can jump off of it. That is cool and good.
Yeah, I like it too. Yeah. Good ropes.
Mm-hmm. Also, the directions that you can swing are locked into 90 degrees, so it's never like analog. Oh, I just missed it because I was
barely off of it.
Yeah, a couple angles off.
Yeah. Yep, better. Yep. You climb out of the well, and there's a room where you have to kind of swing and jump onto these 2 buttons and then bounce back onto the rope and then swing through the door within a time limit. This is really tricky.
Yeah.
Wall jumping in this in general, like there's a timing to it that's a little tighter than I'm used to.
Yeah.
You know?
The thing that unlocked it for me is that it's not a visual cue. It is actually a tactile cue, at least on the PS2. Like the time to press the button to do your jump is when it vibrates, is when the controller vibrates. But playing that on PC without vibration, I can understand it being really, really tricky to know for sure.
Yeah. I got a vibro mouse.
Oh, you do?
No.
Like,
I don't know if they make such a thing. Like
they used to. that absolutely used to be a thing, a force feedback mouse, but I think those went the way of the Novant Falcon.
Yeah, I no longer have the Novant. No. Yeah, I found this tricky, but that makes sense on why it could be.
Yeah.
You get back to Farah. She's in the harem, and you do this combat. Use a save point here. You have your save point vision. You're like Requiem for a Dream-esque save point. you fat.
After you watch this movie, you will never want to use the sands of time again.
Exactly. And you wake up Farah comforting you, saying, "Don't leave me alone, my love."
When did this happen?
Yeah, I don't know. And during this time, you're going to do more of this stuff as we continue.
Yeah.
But where you've been like, well, she is kind of mouthy, but perhaps she could be a suitable queen. Like as you're jumping on trapeze shit and stuff. But I guess we never see her internal monologue where she's like, well, he did kill my father and enslave me, but he does seem to be good at wall running, so perhaps he could make a suitable king.
He does jumps good.
Yeah, you know what they say about a man with big jumps?
big ups, big humps.
Yeah, big ups, big pup.
Do you want to see my puppy? The worst.
Perhaps would you like to see would you like me to show you my puppy if we get interrupted again? Anyway. So we're now on to a new set of areas here: the Hall of Learning, the Observatory, and the butt rock chugging prison.
Donut. Yes. So the Hall of Learning is like a big library. This is where they introduce the light direction. Again, it's very late for the game to do this, but it kind of seemed de rigueur. So you've got like a beam of light that you're directing, all throughout this library, including like you hit crystals descended vertically up and down floors. This is a good iteration of this, I think. Actually,
yeah. It's fine. It's good. It's a little bit like video game, but yeah, it's fine. You get another sword upgrade here, which like at least temporarily feels meaningful.
Yeah. And the next area is another big kind of like set piece puzzle. You get to the observatory, which has this like planetarium up at the top of it. And this is neat because you can control the rotation. Like you can rotate individual planets that have their own kind of like basically just a horizontal bar they can trapeze off of. But, it's where they have the moons and whatever hanging. And you've got to get them in like the right configuration to go in and hit all these doors to proceed. I really like reading this space.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. This is where they introduce the big dudes with the armor, big swords. You cannot jump over these guys.
Nope.
Obnoxious.
This is them kind of like reusing the boss fight from when you fought your dad, except they have armor this time, which means they take a ton of hits.
Yep. Yeah. Armored like a stepdad. So you get to these ramparts, you fall into this prison chamber, introducing the prison section, and the musical cue here is hilarious.
Yes.
Just this like absolute like dirt rock starts playing, and you take off your shirt for something for mommy. Yeah. And you get out of the prison.
Yeah. This is fun. I like this quite a bit. Like this is the wall running final exam a little bit. There's large sections of this where there's no permanent foothold. Like you will wall run over a switch that creates just a temporary platform for you to set up your next wall run. Something that I think is actually really good about the way the game designed this, or is designed, specifically the wall jumps here, is that early on there are visual cues about where you need to do your jump when you're doing a wall run. If you need to vault off of it onto, another surface. So like there will be like a patch of moss right there, or there will be a shadow or a crack kind of demarcating where you need to go. By the time you're here in the prison, those little hints are gone. and it is kind of relying on you to understand exactly what the dimensions of his jumps are.
Yeah, and kind of intuit
Yeah.
where they might be there.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So, yeah, I agree. So you get back above ground. There's another fight. You save again, and Farah is caressing you again. You freak out to make sure she didn't steal your dagger. She did not.
Nope. I was like, it's all right. It's me. Okay. Maybe I trust you. Maybe I don't. I don't know. Obviously, I don't. If I'm freaking out when I see you.
Yeah, but I would like to marry you.
Yes, maybe.
So just no. Yeah, maybe
not.
We'll see. This is. So we get to this other kind of brief puzzle section to get to the base of this tower.
Yes.
And the whole thing, we're going back up to where the vizier is and where the hourglass is the whole point of this.
Yeah, it's where we saw the flying creatures take the hourglass.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is the fucking pits. This had me at the end of my this elevator. This had me at the end of my rope. I almost considered just YouTubing the ending of this game. Actually.
Oh wow, yeah. This fucking sucks.
I hate it.
Yeah. This is horrible.
Yeah.
Every game from this era has something like this.
Yeah.
Like just like one part where you're just like, fuck this shit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It's a good, you're quarantined the past. So it's an elevator, enemy elevator. Mm-hmm. So it just means it's a nonstop wave after wave of just engaging with this really difficult combat.
Yes.
So it sucks. I mean, it doesn't suck in a new way. It's just a big concentration of stuff that already sucked.
Yeah. It takes forever. And there are 2 fountains you can go to heal yourself. However, the room is very, very small. Additionally, more often than not, I had enough health to live through this. What I didn't have was the ability to save Farah. She would die more often than me, and that would lead to these game overs. I didn't count this, but it was definitely like double digits. A double-digit number of attempts to do this, and
this is a short game, and this adds. It's a short game in terms of the play clock or game clock. In terms of the play clock, this adds a lot.
Yes,
to it.
Yeah, and the enemy waves get more difficult. They end up throwing in just a ton of the people that you can't jump over. You are in the circular room, so it makes sense that you would be able to do these vault attacks off the walls. Not really.
Yeah.
I've kind of run out of ways to explain how and why the combat is bad, but this was an awful lot of it in a way, and it was in an amount and quality that I could not find a way to mitigate. And I was just at the end of my rope.
Yeah. We can scoop past combat from here.
Yeah. Cause it's,
as best we can.
It's kind of not a factor, actually.
Yeah. You're still going to do it. It's just a bummer.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot to say about it.
Yeah.
So
at the top of this, you do get to the hourglass room, kind of in this cool looking treasure chamber. And as the prince gets on top of the hourglass, you get this vision of Farah taking the dagger. And Farah is giving you directions like, hey, go ahead and plunge it into the top of this. And then all of a sudden, this is where the prince realizes, hey, wait, we enslaved you.
Yeah.
Why should I trust you? Why should you trust me? I'm not going to do what you tell me with this.
Yeah. It's because he listened to that song, got real pumped up to tell off his stepmom. He went down to the prison and did some squats.
Yeah.
And now he's all pumped up on teen adrenaline.
And his like nonsensical crisis of faith creates just enough of an opening for the vizier to come in and uses sand magic to blow us both out of the tower, but the prince keeps a hold of the dagger.
Yeah. Yep. So you wake up in this tomb, and Farah's really mad that you didn't trust, really justifiably, like, just fucking end this.
we were there, you idiot.
Yeah. Throw the fucking ring in the goddamn lava. So they kind of do this, like, they start, now we're in romance mode.
Yes.
This is love theme from Prince of Persia, like,
and we don't see them. All that we see, it's, just darkness and like with some dust in the air, and they're talking, and there's what sounds like, like clothing rustling.
Yes.
Yeah.
So presumably, like, they did some pre-gaming.
Yeah.
They're going, like, now it's very tender, like, oh, hold my hand, don't let go. I didn't mean what I said.
Yeah.
Farah says, oh, there's this magic word that my mother taught me to make a door appear. It's silly. But then he's like, well, tell me. He's like, no, you'll make fun of me. He's, I promise I won't. And she says it, a trapdoor opens in the floor, and they run down this big spiral staircase full of veils. Like, this is a very metaphorical vagina that we're in, like, this part. Like, what a weird tomb.
Yeah. But yeah,
I'm gonna be buried in like the Bison fuck corridor. Like,
but this staircase goes on forever as you go down, and the veils get thicker and thicker, and you come out in this kind of like round chamber, and Farah is like saying like, oh, it's beautiful here, I could stay here forever, where are you, I can hear you but I can't see you. They're stuck in like individual enchanted realms.
Yes.
And you have to do this puzzle where you have to you go in these doors in the correct order, which is just trial and error.
Yep. And once you do, you come in on Farah bathing in a golden pool, and then you have sex.
Yes.
And this is what in 2003 games critics were like, this is great romance. Like, this is really good dynamics, and
we spent time together, and then character. At the end we fucked.
Yeah, exactly. I earned this girlfriend by doing combat challenges. I would like one girlfriend, please. Like, put in these parkour tokens into the girlfriend machine.
Yep.
So you wake up on the slab in the tomb. The dagger is gone.
Oh, she betrayed you.
Yep. So you have no weapons, and we go through this kind of like circular room mirror puzzle thing to get the mega sword. Yeah,
the room mirror puzzle is basically the peg puzzle from Cracker Barrel.
It's very Cracker Barrel-esque.
Yeah. And this gets you a strong
Cracker
sword.
Barrel Knights.
The gravy of time. So this gets you a strong sword. If you land a hit on an enemy, it will dissolve them in one blow. This is prior to the gravity gun, but I think this is meant to be like a super empowering gravity gun kind of moment.
Yeah, agreed.
But you don't have the dagger, which means that you are unable to rewind time, and you have to do like a really difficult and technical tower climbing section. Actually, it's like the final exam. Yeah, for this it feels like with no undos. Yeah, it's really tricky. Like this, it's a bummer to base your game around having that safety net and then take it away. I think. Do not love that as an idea. Like if I had the rewind here, this would actually be really fun. I like it. It feels precarious. The clues for which way you need to go are not necessarily there. It just relies on you having internalized what the prince can do. It's just the checkpointing was not generous enough, and you ended up having to redo an awful lot if you died, when dying was just part of the natural iteration cycle. Prior to this point. Yep. When you get up to the top, Farah is fighting with some sand demons. They get the drop on her, and things up with her dangling by the dagger, with the prince holding onto the blade. She lets go to sacrifice herself. And you cannot rewind time to bring her back. No, it is out of charges. And this brings on this long fight. So you have the dagger back, but there's no charges inside of it, because your sword will instantly dissolve enemies, and because you're just fighting big boys. As though it was some kind of season of large boys. You can't actually absorb any charges unless the enemies happen to trip and fall over. I couldn't find a way to induce this. It just kind of happens. Yeah, bummer. Yeah. Vizier pops up. He wants the dagger. And he promises eternal life. The prince declines because he's clearly evil. He's like, eternal life with everybody that I care about dead. No, thank you. So yeah, well, and also these guys all have eternal life. All the sand monsters, right? Yeah, it seems sucky. The prince declines. He jams the dagger on the top of the hourglass, rewinding the whole game. This is cool. I like that moment. This is a clever conceit. It does we'll talk about the story part. It does make it very silly that he was telling the story the way he was. Yeah. So you end up back at the camp in the opening cutscene, and you have all your memories, and you have the dagger. So you rush to Farah's bedroom, which is where the game opens. Like, we didn't talk about when the game starts, you just like walk into a room. Yes. To start the game. It's nice and understated. And, she thinks you're just like invading because you were, and you tell her everything that happens, which is the game so far. Yes. Is the story. So the prince says, hey, this vizier is no good. We need to stop the signaler from being shot so the gate opens, and that will give you time to expose the vizier for what he is. The vizier comes in and attacks, saying, oh, how will it look when the son of the Maharaja's greatest enemy is, found dead in the bedroom trying to abduct the daughter? But the prince is not having any of it, and this starts a fight.
Yeah. Yep. And this is the one of two boss fights in the game. Mm-hmm. The second boss fight. I found this really easy.
Yeah, it's kind of anticlimactic.
Which makes me think that's why all the combats up until this point were group combats. Because fighting one-on-one is not hard. Like you have a perfect block, there's no chip damage, it just was pretty easy and pretty anticlimactic. Yeah. And we don't spend enough time with the vizier.
No.
He's just such a stock evil guy. I did not get a good sense of him. I think that the game wanted me to hate him, and I didn't. I hated all of the regular enemies.
It's weird because he comes back in the third game.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's he's very much, he just exists as a cartoon. But yeah, this fight, it's real video game. I don't know. I tried to think of video game.unity. But the vizier himself, he shields up and he summons these three clones that will either attack with their staff or do to cast a spell when you're far enough away from them. You just have to press the attack until three of them go down, and eventually you end up outside and you can land the killing blow.
Yep. Afterwards, the prince and Pharaoh are talking. He gives her the dagger and says hey, the vizier is dead. We're going to avoid all this stuff. She's like, why did you make up such a story? And he kisses her, not understanding that
she doesn't have a memory.
Yeah, she doesn't have a memory of that.
She falls in love quick, but not that quick.
Yeah, exactly. You need at least 2 hours, dude. But I told her this story. I earned a girlfriend. So she pushes you away. So he rewinds time before the kiss. I think this is charming in an 80s movie kind of way a little bit.
Yeah. Well, also
take back the social blunder.
Yeah. I like that quite a bit. The fact that it shows the prince understanding. He's just okay, yeah, I can undo that.
Oh yeah, I'm omnipotent.
I can fuck it up. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah.
And just goes back to it and says, okay, well, here's the dagger. Have a good life. I will see you. And as he is, climbing down a tree to leave, she asks, hey, what's your name? And the name that he tells her is the magic word that she had told him her mother shared about how to open a magic door. It was something ridiculous like cockaboo or something like that.
I can't remember what it is. Yeah. Wuzzle wuzzle?
Is that what that's for entertainment these days?
Yeah.
And she gasps oh my gosh, does he actually,
Yeah.
Could this actually be true? How could he know that? And then the game ends.
Yeah. And then, we don't get, it's to the game's credit. Mm-hmm. That we don't get, I don't want the after years about this shit.
No.
I like that it just ends.
Mm-hmm. It's a good ending.
It's a nice ending. It's I don't know, it ended up coming away from this really mixed in general.
Yeah.
The good parts were good. Mm-hmm. Bad parts were not good. There's not more bad parts than good parts, but there are still way more than it needs.
Yeah, it is substantial by volume. It is non-trivial how much time you spend in this doing very, very bad combat. Yeah. Yep.
And that is a bummer. And then if you take that away, there is something really to admire about how svelte this is and how they just kind of carved away a lot of stuff that didn't work.
Yeah.
It's just that they had carved away everything that didn't work, right? If they had just gotten rid of, let's say there were just a couple duels in this and it wasn't combat focused at all, I could see why, especially in 2003, this game being 4 hours would not be acceptable.
Yeah, no, people would have revolted. How can you charge $50 for this? I mean, we're going through that right now with RE3 coming out and people feeling like it wasn't, enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, I kind of get it. I just, it aged really poorly.
Yeah.
That part. Yeah. And the parts that did age really well. Mm-hmm. And sometimes approach best in class for that very specific, whatever you would call that sub gameplay genre. Mm-hmm. So it's a good game.
Yeah.
Not great. I'll never play it again. I'm happy that I got a chance to play it. I was happy to have the support and having it produced, as an excuse to get through this kind of thing. but it wasn't something that I think that if you're listening to this and you haven't played this in a while, it might be okay to leave this quarantined in the past.
Yeah. You can take your good memories, and like stuff has been, pulled from this. The combat has been taken and iterated upon. Like, this is an important game, capital I important, even if as an artifact of the past, it's funny because a game like this with its reputation, it seems like, oh yeah, like this is going to transcend, it is not of its time. It is something, separated above transcendent. And going back to it, it's a little bit disappointing to say like, no, like only parts of it transcended that. It is very much a product of 2003. It is very much a product of like the two, of the PS2 era.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's just a matter of like, okay, it's been built up an awful lot. It has a reputation that precedes it. A lot of people have very, very fond memories of it. I'll be curious to see what the responses are like. Who has played it more recently, who might be into it. And the other thing I was thinking about is that this made me think a lot because when we've gone back to this era, for the show, it's almost uniformly been pretty rough. Yeah.
Right? Like, what are the unqualified successes from the PS2 era that we've done?
Shadow of the Colossus,
RE4, Katamari, Shadow of the Colossus, like they're rare.
Yeah.
They exist, but they're pretty rare. And much more often we get things that are equally lauded. Like we get like your God of Wars and your Prince of Persias and stuff that just like the growing pains are just too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was such a weird generation that it just, we just didn't have stuff figured out at the time. There's a time in which I would have said like, oh, PS2 was definitely my like desert island console.
Yeah.
And doing the show has definitely made me rethink that because it's like a lot of these things that I think, age really well, maybe not. Maybe not. So, which is okay.
Yeah.
If you have responses to Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, hit us up by April 15th at Duckfeed.tv/contact.
Yes. There you can write in about either this game or any of the games we talked about this month. I am rushing to pull up the calendar so I can see what games we've played
Luigi's
in.
Mansion.
Yes, Luigi's Mansion.
Legend of Grimrock 2. Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, or next game's months, which are Hypnospace Outlaw, Celeste, or Resident Evil 3 Remake.
Yes. If you are writing in, please separate them by game. If you have thoughts about multiple games, do multiple, short entries, and I will collate them. That makes my job easier. So thank you for doing that in advance.
If you want to support the network, you go to patreon.com/duckfeed.tv. Next week is our premium episode this month on Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, and the generalities of that come out for everybody, but the full episode is for patrons.
Yes.
$5 get you all the back episodes, get you several bonus shows, bonus episodes of existing shows. Like we do a lot for $5.
Yes.
So check that out.
Yeah. And, we understand these are real weird times. And if you cannot afford that, it's totally fine. But there
is,
is,
be here when you get back.
It is only getting more valuable as time goes on. So we'll welcome you back with open arms when it is feasible for you. And just thanks a lot for listening.
Yeah, with arms wide open, like a Prince of Persia, the Warrior of Finn soundtrack thing. That's a different kind of
it's a different kind of awful. Yeah.
Yeah. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, which is very appreciated. You listen to the other shows on the network. And that's probably about it.
I think so.
We appreciate you. Thank you for listening. And what can they watch out for until next time, Cole?
Man, I wish I knew that magic word because I would have just said it. But nope, here we are.
Wuzzle wuzzle?
Well, watch out for Wuzzle Wuzzle.